Well, I think that it just thickens the plot, and then there's a lot of like the. I guess the hard part is because the way the election code is, and the way it's the interpretation of everything. Lindsay is interpreting it based on what our court system here is saying. Federal is saying that it's not a recognized court, or the decisions shouldn't have been. It's a conflict of interest. So that makes things a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, well, the judge was very hostile in his judgment. If you read the judgment, it was extremely negative. And if you look at it from the outside, a judge, you can understand that a bit, because here you have Lindsay, who's the electoral officer, who refused to allow Keith to run. Mm-hmm. Lindsay was on the band council 2 sessions ago when he voted.
He was parted, yeah.
The first time Keith was voted off the council,
and so was Arlene.
And Arlene was also there, and then Keith is out. They changed some of the procedures in the election. And then now Lindsay's the electoral officer who voted to get Keith out, and hires assistant who was also voted against Keith. So from an outside perspective, it certainly looks. The perception would be that Keith is not being fairly treated. You can get that impression.
Well, internally also, people had made comments to me that in the past, electoral officers weren't given an office by the Mohawk Council, weren't given a cell phone by the Mohawk Council, which Lindsay, he had an office from the Mohawk Council. Then he ends up on their television program doing, recycle, it doesn't make sense. It's sort of like you're too close to it. The funny thing is, I was watching, it might have been a couple of weeks ago, I was watching the election with the Crees, and they had the chief electoral officer on there, and it was funny because they asked him how many people were running, and he answered that, and they said, well, what is their platforms? And he said, I don't know. I'm not allowed to watch television in regards to their candidates. I'm not allowed to read anything that they're doing. I'm not allowed to have any contact with the incumbents and or anybody else. I have to, he had so many rules and regulations, and that's the Crees, and it's only a stone's throw away from here, and it seems like they're doing things the right way. And for us, it's a little bit different. People are saying that the electoral officer and electoral system is too close to the present council now, and that's not a...
I think it is, and like I said earlier before, in politics it's perception. It's not necessarily what's true or what's not true or what's right or what's wrong. It's a perception that people have. Mm-hmm. And in some cases, from what you're telling me, some people feel maybe Lindsay was too close to the council. On the other hand, though, the previous electoral officers have already made recommendations to the band council how to change things, and maybe they listened in this case to those recommendations and gave him an office and a cell phone and more support. I don't think it's just because he was a former member of council. I think there were some legitimate handicaps that previous electoral officers had, and so there was a little bit more support for Lindsay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that was the situation. It's just that the perception that some of the people in the community are saying that and if I take those two examples of the Crees and what's happening here,
electoral reform is an issue, and they should, and the MCK certainly after this year and what happened in the previous, they should really take a serious look at election reform and see how they can improve it and to avoid these kind of situations. I don't think the solution is a new justice legislation here. It's more than that. It's without that, the present code under the present legislation that the community has flaws in it, and it's certainly not. It's not working effectively.
And I want to talk more about that, but we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after these messages.